My uncle didn't want to make me a partner in the family business and chose his inexperienced son. So I joined their competitors, and now they are screwed. Hey, so I need to get this off my chest because I seriously don't know if I'm losing it or if my family is just that messed up. I'm Jen, 30 years old, and I used to work for my family's real estate business, used to being the key part here. The whole thing is like some messed up soap opera, but worse because it's my actual life. So to give a bit of background, my dad, David, passed away about 3 years ago, and he was one of the owners of this real estate company. It wasn't a huge company or anything, but it was a big deal for my family. He ran it with his two brothers, my uncle Peter, who's basically been in charge since dad died, and my uncle Greg, who, well, we don't talk about him anymore. I'll get to that. Growing up, I was always around the business. My dad would bring me in sometimes when I was younger, and when I graduated from business school, I started working there full time. And honestly, I loved it. I was learning everything I could, doing all the grunt work, proving myself, all that stuff. My dad always said I'd be a partner one day, and I really believed that. Fast forward 9 years of busting my ass at this company, and here's where things went sideways. About 2 weeks ago, I found out that Uncle Peter is planning to retire in the next couple of years. Naturally, I figured I'd be next in line to take over as CEO. Makes sense, right? I've been doing most of the work since my dad died. I know how everything runs, and let's be honest, I've earned it. But nope. Peter has a son, Mark, who just graduated from college last year with some fancy degree. And, surprise, surprise, Peter decided Mark should be the next CEO. Here's the real kicker. I didn't even find this out from Peter himself. No, that would have been too respectful. Instead, my mom casually drops this on me during dinner like, "Oh, did you hear? Peter's making Mark the new CEO because you didn't want the position." I was like, "Wait, what? I didn't want it? When did I say that?" Turns out Peter told my aunt, Mark's mom, that I declined the offer to be a partner and the CEO. First of all, there was never an offer. Peter didn't even talk to me about it. He just decided I didn't want it and handed the whole damn thing to his son, who, mind you, has been working for the company for a grand total of 0 days. I called Peter that night because I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe there was some mix-up or whatever. Nope, no mix-up. He straight up told me that he thought Mark would be the best fit for the future of the company. I literally laughed when he said that. Mark is 23 years old. He's fresh out of college and has never worked a day in his life, at least not in this business. I've been here for 9 years, running things, keeping everything afloat after Dad died. And now I'm just supposed to train Mark and let him take over? Are you serious? Peter tried to sell it to me like, "Oh, don't worry, you're still the CFO. You'll be guiding Mark and he'll learn from you." He even had the nerve to say that I'd basically be in charge while Mark gets up to speed. Basically? So I'm supposed to do all the work while Mark gets the title, the respect, and the paycheck? No way. I told Peter straight up that if Mark becomes CEO, I'm done. I wasn't going to stay on and babysit my cousin. Peter just shrugged it off like I was overreacting. He even tried to make me feel guilty, saying Mark needs this, and if he doesn't get it, he might leave the company like Uncle Greg did years ago. I didn't care. I told Peter if that's what he's worried about, he can go ahead and let Mark have the title, but I wouldn't stick around for it. It was a total ultimatum, and honestly, I was expecting Peter to back down. I thought he'd realize how stupid this whole thing was and reconsider. But no, he just doubled down and said, "Well, I've already made my decision." That was it for me. I realized in that moment that Peter didn't give a damn about all the work I've done. It didn't matter how much I'd sacrificed, how much I'd helped him keep the company going after my dad passed. All that mattered was keeping Mark happy. And you know what? I get it. Mark's his son. I'll never be able to compete with that. But it still hurt. A lot. I left that conversation feeling completely defeated. I talked to my mom after, thinking she'd have my back. But even she wasn't as supportive as I hoped. She said something like, "Well, Peter's just trying to keep the family together, and you can't blame him for wanting to take care of his son." Seriously? What about me? Am I not family? That's when things started to click for me. I'd been bending over backward for this company, for this family, but none of them really saw me as part of the inner circle. I was the backup plan, the one who was supposed to fill in the gaps when things went wrong, but never the one to actually lead, and I'd been too blind to see it until now. I wasn't going to sit around and wallow, though. If they didn't want me, I'd go where I was valued. So I made a decision that I knew would piss them off, but I didn't care anymore. I reached out to Uncle Greg. Now here's where things get interesting. Uncle Greg, as I mentioned earlier, was basically cast out of the family 6 years ago. He and Peter had some huge falling out, and Greg started his own real estate company. Ever since, we were told to treat him like he didn't exist. I hadn't spoken to him in years. but I knew he was still running his business and doing pretty well, so I sent him an email. I kept it short and to the point. Told him what happened with Peter, how I was passed over for CEO, and how I was looking for new opportunities. I wasn't even sure if he'd respond, but he did. Fast. Greg said he'd love to have me on board. Not only did he offer me the CFO position at his company, but he also said he'd make me a partner. And if I stuck around long enough, he'd even consider me for CEO after he retired. I couldn't believe it. After all the crap I'd just gone through with Peter, here was Greg, ready to give me everything I'd worked for, no strings attached. That same day, I resigned from Peter's company. I didn't even give him the courtesy of a 2-week notice. Just packed up my stuff, sent him a message that I was done, and that was it. And honestly, it felt amazing. So, things took a turn after I left Peter's company, and honestly, I didn't expect things to blow up the way they did. Like, I knew there'd be fallout, but I didn't think it'd get this bad. I joined Uncle Greg's company the day after I quit, and the vibe there was completely different. Greg's not the type to micromanage or treat people like they owe him something. I walked in, and right away I felt like I mattered. The team he's got over there is super chill, and honestly, it was refreshing compared to how uptight things were with Peter. No one walks on eggshells. They just get the job done, and there's none of that fake family loyalty crap hanging over your head. But then, the real fun started. Greg and I decided to announce that I had joined his company because why not? It's not like it was some big secret. So we posted a picture together on LinkedIn. Nothing fancy, just us smiling and holding up the company sign. And that's when my phone practically exploded. By the time I woke up the next morning, I had 1,000,000 missed calls, texts, and voicemails from family. It was like they all suddenly realized I was a person again. I mean, I had just resigned from Peter's company, and no one said a word to me when I left. But the second they saw me with Greg, it was like the world was ending. Peter, Mark, and even my cousins started blowing up my phone, calling me a traitor and saying I was tearing the family apart. Peter was furious. I didn't even bother answering his calls at first, but after the 4th voicemail where he was screaming about how I had betrayed him, I figured I might as well hear him out. Huge mistake. The second I picked up, Peter went off on this rant about how I was ungrateful and how he had done everything for me. He said I'd ruined the family by joining Greg and that he'd make sure I suffer the consequences for it. I just hung up on him. I mean, suffer the consequences? For what, getting a better job? It was ridiculous. They were acting like I'd declared war on them or something. But here's the kicker. The rest of the family wasn't much better. My cousins, who never had anything to say to me when I was working for Peter, suddenly decided I was a villain. They started sending me these passive-aggressive texts, calling me selfish and accusing me of stealing from the family. The only person who didn't immediately lose their mind was my mom, but even she was acting weird. She kept saying stuff like, "I wish you hadn't done this," and "You don't know the whole story." I asked her what the hell she meant by that, but she just kept being vague, which was super frustrating. So I decided to ask Greg. I figured if there was some big secret I didn't know, he'd tell me. After all, we were working together now, and I wanted to know if there was more to the family drama than I'd been told. When I brought it up, Greg got really quiet and refused to tell me anything. Things only got crazier after that, though. Word got out that I was not only working for Greg, but that I was also a partner in his company. That's when the real fun started. I guess Peter and Mark didn't like the idea of me being in a position of power with their biggest competitor, because Peter showed up at my apartment one night with Mark in tow, banging on my door like a lunatic. When I answered, Peter was red-faced, like he'd been holding in his anger for days. He started yelling about how I was stealing his employees and how Greg and I were conspiring to destroy his business. Mark just stood there looking all smug, like he had anything to do with any of this. I told them they needed to leave, but Peter wouldn't let it go. He threatened to sue me for employee poaching, which I'm pretty sure isn't even a thing. But whatever, he was losing it. I ended up calling the cops to get them off my property, which only made Peter more furious. After that, he blocked me on everything. Phone, email, social media, you name it. Mark did the same. I guess that was their way of cutting me off for good. And honestly, good riddance. I'm not wasting any more time on them. I've got a new job, a better one, and I'm not looking back. They can keep their family drama, but I'm done with it. Update 1. Alright, so things have gotten even crazier since I left Peter's company. I thought the worst of the drama was over after Peter and Mark showed up at my door acting like I was some kind of criminal. But clearly I underestimated how petty my family could be. If anything, things have only escalated from there. After the whole door-banging incident, I figured Peter and Mark would back off, since I had to call the cops to get them to leave. They blocked me, so I thought that was the end of it. But oh no, it's like they couldn't just let it go. It wasn't enough for them to label me a traitor to the family. they had to go and drag the rest of the family into this mess. I woke up one morning to find my phone blowing up again, and this time, it wasn't just Peter and Mark. Somehow, they'd managed to get the entire extended family involved. Cousins I hadn't talked to in years were suddenly popping up in my texts, accusing me of betraying the family and telling me how disappointed they were in me. Like, seriously? These people never gave a damn about me before, but now they all had something to say. It was wild. Apparently, Peter had been running his mouth at every family gathering, telling anyone who'd listen that I was trying to sabotage the family business by joining Greg. He made it sound like I was some kind of corporate spy, like I was sneaking around trying to steal trade secrets or something ridiculous like that, and people believed him. One of my cousins, Anna, called me in the middle of the day, and I stupidly answered. She launched into this long rant about how family comes first, and how I should have known better than to work for Greg. I tried explaining to her that Peter literally forced me out of the company by giving Mark the CEO position, but she wouldn't hear it. She just kept saying, "You shouldn't have gone to Greg. You know how much Peter hates him." Like it was my responsibility to keep Peter happy, even though he screwed me over. I got fed up and hung up on her, but that didn't stop the barrage of texts and calls. Everyone was treating me like I'd personally burned down the family business, and it was exhausting. I ended up putting my phone on silent for a couple of days just to get some peace. The only person who hadn't weighed in yet was my mom. And honestly, I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. Part of me was relieved she hadn't jumped on the hate train with everyone else, but another part of me was worried she was just waiting for the right moment to hit me with her disapproval. A few days later, my mom finally called. I hesitated to answer because I had no idea what she was going to say, but at the same time, I couldn't avoid her forever, so I picked up. She didn't sound angry, which honestly threw me off a bit. I was expecting her to start lecturing me like the rest of the family, but instead, she just sighed and said, "I wish you hadn't done this, Jen." I asked her what exactly she meant by that because, in my mind, I hadn't done anything wrong. I was forced out of the company and took a better offer. End of story. But my mom wasn't seeing it that way. She said she understood why I was upset about the whole Mark situation, but that going to work for Greg was crossing a line. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, they crossed the line first. Peter completely screwed me over, and now I'm supposed to just sit there and take it? Why is everyone acting like I'm the bad guy here?" She got quiet for a second, and then she hit me with something I didn't expect. "There's more to this than you know, Jen." Of course, this was the second time she'd said something cryptic like that, and honestly, I was sick of it. I asked her what she meant, and she said something like, "There's a lot of history between Peter and Greg that you don't understand, things you don't know about." I could feel my patience running thin at that point. "Then why don't you tell me? Why is everyone keeping this huge secret from me? I'm not a kid, Mom. I can handle whatever it is." She hesitated again, and I swear I could almost hear her trying to decide if she should tell me the truth. But in the end, she just said, "It's complicated. I don't want to get into it." That's when I lost it. I told her that if she wasn't willing to tell me what was really going on, then she didn't have the right to judge me for making decisions based on the information I did have. I wasn't about to let Peter walk all over me, and if Greg was offering me a better position, I was going to take it. Family be damned. She didn't like that answer. I could hear it in her voice when she said, "I just don't want to see you get hurt." I was like, "Mom, I'm already hurt. I've been hurt for years by this family, and no one seems to care. So if you want to protect me, maybe try supporting me for once instead of making me feel like I'm the one who did something wrong." After that, the conversation kind of fizzled out. My mom said she needed time to think, and that she'd call me back later, but honestly, I didn't expect her to. We haven't spoken since, and I'm starting to think we might never have a real relationship again. And you know what? I'm okay with that. It sucks, but I've come to terms with the fact that I can't change how my family feels about me. They've made their choice, and so have I. I'm not going to let them drag me down anymore. Meanwhile, things at Greg's company are going great. I've settled into my new role, and honestly, it's been a breath of fresh air. Greg's given me so much more freedom to make decisions, and it feels good to finally be treated like the professional I am, instead of Peter's little sidekick. Oh, and here's the kicker. Greg told me that some of Peter's employees have been quietly reaching out to him about possibly jumping ship. Apparently, a lot of them aren't too happy with the way Mark's been running things. Shocker. And they're looking for other opportunities. I'm not gonna lie, it felt pretty good to hear that. Karma's a bitch, I guess. Anyway, that's where things stand now. My family's pretty much disowned me, but I found a better place to be, and honestly, I don't miss them as much as I thought I would. I've learned that just because people are family doesn't mean they always have your best interests at heart. Sometimes you've got to put yourself first. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Update 2. Alright, so things have gotten real weird lately. If you've been following along, you know that after I left Peter's company and joined Uncle Greg, my whole family pretty much lost their minds. They've been calling me a traitor, accusing me of tearing the family apart, and just generally acting like I'm some kind of villain. The only person who hasn't completely cut me off is my mom, but even she's been distant and weird ever since I found out she was hiding stuff about Greg. But what happened a few days ago? That's the real kicker. I finally found out the whole truth about why Greg got pushed out of the family business, and let me tell you, it's worse than I ever imagined. So, it all started when Greg invited me over to his house for dinner. He wanted me to meet his wife, Sarah, since we'd been working so closely together lately. I didn't think much of it. It seemed like a normal family dinner, and I figured it'd be good to get to know Sarah since she's technically my aunt. I'd only seen her a few times at family gatherings way back when, but she always kept her distance from our side of the family, so I never really knew her. Dinner was fine, nothing special. Sarah's nice enough, though a bit on the quiet side. The conversation was pretty casual at first, just business talk, and a bit about how things were going at the company. But after we ate, Greg sent Sarah upstairs to rest. She wasn't feeling well, and that's when things got interesting. Once we were alone, Greg sat down across from me, gave me this serious look, and said, "Jen, I think it's time I told you the real reason I left the family business." Now, I already knew there was something shady that went down between him, Peter, and my mom, but I wasn't expecting the full story to be as insane as it was. Greg took a deep breath and started talking. He told me that years ago, way before the big fight that got him kicked out of the business, he and my mom used to be really close, like too close. He didn't say it outright, but I could tell from the way he was talking that my mom had feelings for him. Yeah, that kind of close. Greg went on to explain that my mom had been unhappy in her marriage to my dad for a while, which I kinda knew. But I didn't know just how bad it was. Apparently, she used to confide in Greg about it all the time, talking about how she felt trapped and like she'd married the wrong man. And Greg, trying to be a good brother-in-law, just listened and tried to be supportive. He thought it was harmless. But things started to get weird when my mom began dropping hints that she wished she'd married him instead of my dad. At this point, I'm sitting there, mouth hanging open because, what? I mean, I know my mom isn't perfect, but the idea that she would have gone after Greg, my dad's own brother, that's just a whole new level of messed up. Anyway, Greg told me that things came to a head one Thanksgiving. This was around 6 years ago. The whole family was at our house for the holiday, and at some point, my mom pulled Greg into the kitchen under the pretense of needing help with something. He said he didn't think anything of it at the time, but once they were alone, she cornered him and told him she wanted to leave my dad and be with him. Greg was shocked. He tried to let her down easy, saying that he loved my dad like a brother and that there was no way he could ever betray him like that. But my mom wouldn't let it go. She got upset, saying she didn't care anymore and that she knew Greg felt something for her too. He told me it was one of the most awkward moments of his life, and just as he was trying to leave the kitchen, my dad walked in. Of course, my dad freaked out. He didn't see everything that happened, but he saw them standing way too close, and that was enough. My dad immediately accused Greg of trying to steal his wife, and my mom. Instead of coming clean, she panicked and went along with it. She started saying that Greg had been trying to make a move on her for years, that he'd been manipulating her and trying to break up their marriage. Greg was basically thrown out of the house that night, and that's when my mom started spreading rumors that Greg was also stealing money from the family business. She told Peter and my dad that Greg had been planning to start his own company behind their backs, using the family's money to fund it. And since everyone was already pissed at him for what they thought was an affair, they believed her. No one even gave Greg a chance to explain. I was stunned. I mean, I knew there was something fishy about the way Greg was forced out, but this was on a whole other level. My mom had completely destroyed his reputation to save herself. And the worst part? I'd been in the dark about all of it. After Greg finished telling me everything, he just sat there waiting for my reaction. I didn't even know what to say. How do you process something like that? My mom had lied to everyone, to the whole family, and ruined Greg's life because she was scared of getting caught. And now, years later, I was the one dealing with the fallout because I chose to work for him. I didn't tell Greg how disgusted I felt. I couldn't. I just nodded, thanked him for being honest, and told him I needed some time to think. Then I left. But the second I got home, I sat in my car for like a solid hour, just trying to wrap my head around it all. Part of me wanted to confront my mom right then and there, to call her out for everything she'd done. But another part of me, I didn't even know if I wanted to hear her side of it. What could she possibly say to justify what she did? How do you forgive someone for something like that? It's been a few days since I found out, and I still haven't said anything to her. I haven't told anyone, actually. I've just been sitting with this knowledge, trying to figure out what to do next. I feel like I've been betrayed all over again. Not just by Peter or Mark, but by my own mom. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at her the same way again. And the worst part? I'm starting to wonder if I'm just destined to be the scapegoat in this family. First, they screw me over with the business, and now this? It's like no matter what I do, I'm always the one who ends up hurt. I don't know what my next move is. I guess I'll just have to figure it out as I go. But one thing's for sure, I'm not letting this family drag me down anymore. They can keep their secrets, but I'm done being part of it. Update 3. Alright, so here's the thing. After everything that went down with Greg and finding out all that messed up stuff about my mom, I've been in this weird place. You'd think that after hearing all that, I'd be done, right? Like, cut ties completely and move on with my life. But it's not that simple. It's never that simple when family's involved. And I guess I'm still trying to figure out where I stand in all of this. It's been a few weeks since Greg dropped that truth bomb. Sorry, I know I said I wouldn't use that word. I still haven't confronted my mom about it. Every time I think about calling her, I just freeze. It's like, what do you even say? Hey, remember that time you tried to cheat on Dad with his brother and then ruined his life to cover it up? I just don't think I have it in me to start that conversation. But here's the thing that's been eating at me. I can't avoid her forever. I mean, she's my mom. Despite everything, despite all the lies and the betrayal, part of me still wants to hear her side of things. Maybe it's some kind of messed up hope that she'll have an explanation. Or maybe I just want her to finally admit it and apologize. I don't know. I'm just tired of feeling like I'm walking around with this massive secret weighing me down. Meanwhile, work at Greg's company has been intense. In a good way, though. We've been growing faster than I expected, and a bunch of people from Peter's company have actually jumped ship to join us. That's been kind of surreal, honestly. Some of these people I've known for years, but it's like they're seeing me in a completely different light now that I'm not just David's daughter or Peter's niece. I'm the CFO of one of their biggest competitors, and they treat me with so much more respect now. There's been this rumor going around that Peter's company is struggling since Mark took over. I don't have any solid proof, but people are talking. Apparently Mark's in way over his head, which isn't surprising at all considering the guy has zero experience running a business. It's kind of satisfying to hear that, I'm not gonna lie. Karma's doing its thing, I guess. But even with all the work stuff going well, I can't shake this feeling of being stuck in the middle. My family's been treating me like an outcast ever since I joined Greg, and now with everything I know about my mom, it's even worse. I feel like I'm walking this weird line between being part of the family and being totally cut off from them. It's like they don't want me around, but they also can't stop talking about me. I got a message from one of my cousins the other day, Jake, who's always been kind of neutral in all this. He's not like the others who are either on Peter's side or Greg's. He's just there. Anyway, he reached out and said he heard I'd been causing problems and wanted to know my side of the story. I didn't really know how to respond to that. Causing problems? What problems? The only thing I did was leave a toxic work environment and take a better job. But apparently in my family, that's enough to make me the villain. So I told Jake the basics, how Peter screwed me over by giving Mark the CEO position, how I reached out to Greg, and how I've been doing my own thing ever since. I didn't tell him about the whole thing with my mom and Greg, though. That's not something I'm ready to share with anyone yet. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it myself. Jake was surprisingly cool about it. He didn't take sides or tell me I was wrong. He just said he understood why I did what I did, and that he didn't blame me for leaving. It was honestly kind of refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't automatically against me. We ended up chatting for a while, and he mentioned that a lot of people in the family were starting to feel weird about how Peter was running things. He said there's been tension at family gatherings lately, with people whispering about how Peter's decisions are hurting the business. I didn't say much to that, but inside I was like, yeah, no kidding. Peter's always been one to act like he knows best, even when he clearly doesn't. He just doesn't like admitting he's wrong. Anyway, after my talk with Jake, I started thinking more about my next steps. I've been in this weird limbo for a while now, and I'm starting to realize that I need to take control of my own narrative. I can't keep waiting for my family to come around or for my mom to finally tell the truth. It's time to focus on myself and my own future. I made a decision that I think might surprise a lot of people. I'm going to stop trying to fix things with my family. I've spent so much of my life bending over backward for them, trying to be the good daughter, the perfect employee, the peacemaker, but where has that gotten me? Stuck in the middle of their drama, constantly feeling like I'm not enough. I'm done with that. It doesn't mean I'm cutting them off completely, at least not yet. But I'm done letting their opinions control my decisions. If they want to see me as the traitor or the problem, fine. Let them. I know the truth and I know my worth. As for my mom, well, that's still complicated. I'm not ready to confront her yet, but I think I will eventually. I just need more time to figure out what I want from that conversation. Do I want an apology? Do I want her to admit what she did? Or do I just want closure so I can move on? I don't know yet, but I'll get there when I get there. For now, I'm focusing on the positive. Work's going great. I'm making new connections, and I'm finally starting to feel like I'm in control of my own life again. It's a weird feeling, but a good one. So yeah, that's where I'm at. It's been a long journey to get here, and I know it's far from over, but I'm ready to see where it goes. My parents wanted me to drop out of college to fund my siblings' education. I refused and got disowned. Now they want me back after I landed a university job. I've always known that my parents didn't care about me as much as they did about Liam or Sarah. It's been that way since we were kids, but for some reason, I never expected them to just cut me off like that. I mean, who disowns their own kid just because they want to stay in college? But here we are. So let me break this down. I'm in my second year of university. It's not some Ivy League school like Liam got into, but it's a good state university, and I worked hard as hell to get there. I'm doing fine, nothing spectacular, but I'm passing, and I've got some friends, which is more than I ever had in high school. Things were going all right for the first semester, but then the second semester started, and everything went to crap. It was one of those Saturdays where I'd been in my room all morning, just doing schoolwork and catching up on some Netflix. I hadn't even thought about what my parents were up to because, they don't really care what I'm doing anyway. Around lunchtime, they call me downstairs like it's some kind of emergency family meeting. I walk down and I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're finally going to ask me about how school's going or, I don't know, show some interest in my life. Yeah, right. I sit down on the couch and my dad starts talking. He's using that lawyer voice he's got, the one where he sounds all reasonable, but you can tell he's just manipulating the conversation. He's like, Maya, we've been thinking about your future. We want to talk to you about something important. And in my head, I'm like, okay, maybe they've got some advice about internships or something. Nope. My dad goes, we've decided that it would be best for you to take a break from college. I swear my brain froze for a second. I literally didn't understand what he was saying. I asked him, what do you mean take a break? And my mom jumps in with this fake sympathetic tone. You've been doing okay, honey, but we think it's time you start contributing more to the family. Liam is starting law school soon, and we need to make sure Sarah's future is secure too. That's when it hit me. They wanted me to quit school and get a job to help pay for Liam's law school and Sarah's college fund. No joke. They didn't even try to sugarcoat it. My own parents were asking me to give up my education, something I've been busting my ass for, so they could support Liam and Sarah. Like, what the actual hell? I just sat there, staring at them, trying to process it. Are you serious? I asked. My dad, still in that damn lawyer voice, goes, this is a practical solution, Maya. College hasn't been working out as well for you as we hoped. We think it's better if you start working full-time and contribute to the household. You can always go back to school later. Go back later? Like it's that easy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain that I was doing fine in school, that I had plans for my future, but they weren't having it. My mom, always the queen of passive-aggressive insults, says, not everyone is cut out for higher education, Maya. There's no shame in honest work. At that point, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I lost it. So, you want me to drop out so you can pay for Liam and Sarah? I asked, my voice cracking. What about my future? Do I not matter at all? And you know what they did? My dad sighed like he was so disappointed in me, and my mom just shook her head. We've given you plenty of chances, Maya, my dad said. You've never been as focused as your siblings. We're just being realistic about where you fit in this family. That hit hard. Like, really hard. It wasn't just about the money or school. It was about how they've always seen me. Like I'm some sort of afterthought, a backup plan if Liam or Sarah doesn't pan out. And in that moment, I realized that no matter what I did, I was never going to be good enough for them. So I did something I never thought I'd have the guts to do. I stood up, looked them dead in the eyes, and said, I'm not dropping out. If you're done with me, fine. I'll figure it out on my own. The room went dead silent. My mom looked like she'd just seen a ghost, and my dad, well, he just looked pissed. I think they honestly thought I'd cave, that I'd just nod my head and agree to their stupid plan. But not this time. I was done being their backup plan. So, after that whole conversation with my parents, I was still pretty much in shock. Like, what just happened? One minute I'm in college, doing fine, and the next I'm being told I'm basically useless and need to quit everything I've been working for to help Liam and Sarah. It was like a slap to the face, but at the same time, I kinda wasn't surprised. This was just how it always was with them. Liam and Sarah were the stars, and I was, I don't know, the background character? Anyway, after I told them I wasn't quitting school, things got even weirder. My dad didn't say anything at first, just kind of stared at me like I'd insulted him. Then my mom, of course, started with the tears. Classic. She's sitting there, crying and saying, "We're doing this for you, Maya. We just want what's best for the family." But all I could think was, how is this for me? They wanted to sacrifice my future to make sure Liam and Sarah had theirs set up. I was done. I'd had enough of their guilt trips and their constant favoritism. So I told them flat out, I'm not quitting school. If that's what you want from me, I'll just leave. I expected more yelling, more tears, maybe even a fight. But instead, my mom just kept crying, and my dad muttered something about, "You'll regret this decision." But they didn't try to stop me. It's like they didn't even care if I left or stayed. I went upstairs and grabbed my old suitcase. You know, the one we used to take on family vacations? I hadn't used it in years. It felt weird pulling it out like I was packing for a trip, but this time I wasn't sure when or if I'd be coming back. I started throwing clothes in. Nothing fancy, just essentials. A few pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my favorite hoodie. I couldn't even think straight, but I knew I had to get out of there before I lost my nerve. As I was packing, I heard my parents downstairs. My mom was still crying, and my dad was pacing back and forth, talking to her like I wasn't even there. He kept saying things like, "She'll come to her senses, and she's always been difficult." That word, difficult, made my blood boil. It was like they didn't even see me as a person, just a problem to be fixed. It took everything in me not to scream at them. Instead, I just kept packing. I grabbed my laptop, a few notebooks, and the sketchbook I'd been working on. Art's always been my escape, and I figured I'd need it now more than ever. I threw everything into the suitcase and zipped it up. It was heavy as hell, but I didn't care. I was ready to go. The hardest part was walking down the stairs. I could feel my legs shaking, and my stomach was in knots, but I knew I had to do this. My parents were still in the living room, acting like I wasn't even there. My mom had stopped crying and was just sitting there, staring blankly at the wall while my dad was scrolling through his phone, probably pretending to be busy with work stuff. Typical. I stood there for a second, waiting for one of them to say something, to try and stop me. But they didn't. They didn't even look up. It was like I didn't exist to them anymore. So I grabbed my suitcase, opened the front door, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, and that was it. I was gone. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know where I was going. I just started walking. My heart was racing, and I could feel the weight of everything hitting me all at once. I was officially on my own. No family, no home, just me and my suitcase. I must have walked for miles before I realized I had nowhere to go. I pulled out my phone and texted my friend Sarah. We weren't super close, but she'd always been there when I needed someone to talk to. I told her what happened, and within minutes, she texted back, "Come crash at my place, we'll figure it out." Relief washed over me. At least I had somewhere to go for the night. I grabbed an Uber to Sarah's apartment, and when I got there, she hugged me like I was a lost puppy. She didn't even ask for details right away, just let me dump my stuff in her spare room and collapse on the couch. It was the first time I'd felt safe in hours. We didn't talk much that night. I was too tired, and she didn't push. We just ordered pizza and watched some trashy reality show on Netflix until I passed out on the couch. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. My parents asking me to quit school, the way they acted like it wasn't a big deal, the fact that they didn't even try to stop me from leaving. It was like I'd never really been part of their lives at all. But the longer I stayed at Sarah's, the clearer things became. I realized that, yeah, it sucked to leave home like that. But it was also the first time in forever that I felt like I was in control of my own life. No more bending over backward to please my parents. No more trying to fit into the mold they'd made for me. I could actually live for myself. I spent the next week figuring things out. I called my academic advisor, explained the situation, and she was amazing. She helped me apply for more financial aid and even got me into on-campus housing. I was going to be okay. It was weirdly freeing to realize that I didn't need my parents' approval anymore. I was doing this on my own. One of the hardest parts, though, was when my parents texted me. It wasn't an apology, not even close. It was more like guilt tripping, saying things like, "We hope you're okay," and "You should come home and we can talk." Yeah, right. They didn't care if I was okay. They just didn't want to look bad in front of the rest of the family. I ignored the texts and focused on getting my life back together. I also reached out to my Aunt Sarah, my mom's sister. She's the black sheep of the family, an artist who never really fit in with my parents' perfect vision of what success looks like. When I told her what happened, she was furious. "They did what?" she yelled over the phone. She offered to help me out financially until I could get back on my feet, and even said I could stay with her during breaks if I needed to. It was the first time in days that I didn't feel completely alone. By the end of that week, I'd moved into my dorm, and I was starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, I'd be okay. I was scared as hell, don't get me wrong, but there was also this weird sense of freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living under my parents' shadow. I could finally breathe. I've been living in my dorm for a while now, just trying to get used to everything. Honestly, it felt strange at first. I'd go to class, come back to my tiny room, and just sit there sometimes. No yelling parents, no guilt trips, just silence. It was a weird feeling, but at the same time, I was getting used to it. I started making friends at school, and my part-time job at the library was actually kind of nice. Quiet, lots of time to think. Anyway, one day, out of nowhere, I get a text from Liam. Yeah, that Liam, the golden boy who could do no wrong. I hadn't heard from him since I left, and honestly, I wasn't expecting to. I figured he'd side with my parents like always, pretend like nothing was wrong, and keep being the perfect son. So, when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I didn't even know if I wanted to respond. But curiosity got the best of me. The message was simple. Can we meet up? I want to talk. No explanation, no apology, just that. I debated ignoring it, but part of me needed to hear what he had to say. So, after thinking about it for a while, I texted him back and told him we could meet at this little coffee shop, halfway between my campus and his law school. At least if things got awkward, I could bail easily. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He looked different, like not his usual polished, perfect self. His hair was kind of messy, and his clothes weren't as sharp as they usually were. He even looked a little tired. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. This wasn't the Liam I grew up with, the guy who always had everything together. It kind of threw me off. We sat down, ordered some coffee, and there was this awkward silence for a bit. I wasn't sure what to say, and I could tell he was struggling too. Finally, he broke the ice. I'm sorry, he said. Just like that. No build-up, no excuses, just an apology. I raised an eyebrow. For what exactly? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't about to let him off the hook that easily. For everything, I guess, he continued, looking down at his coffee. For not saying anything when you left? For not sticking up for you all these years? I don't know. I've always known how messed up it was, how they treated you, but it was easier to just go along with it. Hearing him admit that kind of hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say. I'd always assumed Liam was clueless, that he was just the golden child who never noticed the way our parents treated me. But to hear him say he knew, that he chose to stay silent, that stung. So what changed? I finally asked, still trying to wrap my head around the fact that he was actually apologizing. Why are you telling me this now? He let out a sigh and ran a hand through his messy hair. I don't know, Maya. When you stood up to them, it made me realize how messed up things really are. I always knew, but I didn't want to admit it, you know? I was comfortable. I was the favorite. Why would I want to mess that up? I nodded slowly, trying to take it all in. So, what do you want from me? Forgiveness? No, he said quickly. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted to talk. I wanted you to know that I get it now, and I'm quitting law school. That was the real shocker. Liam quitting law school? The golden child? The future lawyer of the family? It didn't make sense. Wait, what? You're quitting? Since when? He looked me straight in the eye for the first time since we sat down. Yeah, I've been miserable for months. I never even wanted to be a lawyer, you know? That was all Mom and Dad's idea. I've been faking it this whole time because I didn't want to disappoint them. But seeing you leave and actually do something for yourself, it made me realize I can't keep living like this. I was speechless. This was the same guy who never wavered, who always seemed so sure of himself. To hear him admit that he'd been miserable, that he was only doing what our parents wanted, it blew my mind. So what are you going to do? I asked, still processing everything. He leaned back in his chair and smiled for the first time. I'm going to be a teacher. That's what I've always wanted to do. I just never thought it was an option, but I'm done trying to live up to their expectations. I'm applying to an education program next semester. I didn't know whether to be happy for him or angry. Part of me was still pissed that he'd stayed silent all those years, that he never once stood up for me. But another part of me was proud of him for finally breaking away from our parents' control. It was a weird mix of emotions, and I wasn't sure how to feel. We sat there for a while, just talking about everything. He told me how hard it had been growing up with all the pressure from our parents, how he always felt like he had to be perfect. He admitted that he envied me for being able to walk away, for not caring about what they thought anymore. That kind of threw me off. I never thought Liam envied me. I always saw him as the one who had it all figured out. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was actually seeing Liam. Not the perfect, polished version of him that our parents had created, but the real him. And honestly, he seemed just as lost as I was. Maybe even more. As we wrapped up our conversation, Liam hesitated for a second before asking, "Do you think we could hang out more? I mean, I know I wasn't really there for you before, but I'd like to try, make things right." I didn't answer right away. It wasn't something I could just say yes to without thinking. But after everything he'd told me, after seeing this side of him I never knew existed, I figured maybe it was worth giving it a shot. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think we can try." He smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were actually on the same page. It wasn't perfect, and I still had a lot of anger and resentment to work through, but it was a start. As I walked back to my dorm that day, I couldn't help but feel a weird mix of emotions. I was still pissed at my parents, still trying to figure out what my next steps were, but at least I wasn't alone in it anymore. For once, Liam and I were in the same boat, both trying to figure out who we were outside of our parents' expectations. It wasn't the resolution I expected, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. So after that whole coffee meetup with Liam, I was feeling pretty weird about everything. I mean, on one hand, I was kind of glad he finally got what I've been going through, but on the other hand, I was still pissed at him for staying quiet all those years. And then there was the fact that I hadn't heard from my parents since I left. Nothing. It was like I just didn't exist to them anymore, which was honestly the most messed up part of it all. That is, until I got a message from my mom. It wasn't anything heartfelt or apologetic, though. It was more like a guilt trip disguised as concern. Typical. The text popped up one evening while I was sitting in my dorm room trying to focus on some assignments. My phone buzzed, and there it was from my mom. "Maya, we've been thinking about you. We hope you're doing okay. Please come home. We miss you." Yeah, sure they missed me. They missed having someone to boss around. At first I wasn't even going to respond, but something about that message just rubbed me the wrong way. It was like they were pretending nothing had happened, like they didn't kick me out because I wouldn't quit school for Liam and Sarah. I sat there staring at my phone, debating whether to even bother replying. But then, before I knew it, my fingers were typing. "You guys miss me? Really? You didn't seem to care when you asked me to drop out and pay for Liam and Sarah's future. What's changed now?" I sent it before I could second guess myself. There was no way I was letting them get away with acting like the past few months didn't happen. I wasn't going to just crawl back and pretend like everything was fine because it wasn't. About an hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a longer message. My dad had jumped in, of course. He wrote, "Maya, that's not fair. We were trying to make the best decision for the family. We've always done what we thought was right for all of you. And sometimes that means making hard choices. But you've always been part of this family. It's not too late to come back and talk." I couldn't believe what I was reading. Hard choices? For the family? What about me? It wasn't like I was asking for anything special, just a chance to have my own future. But here they were, making it sound like I was the one being unreasonable. It made my blood boil. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but instead, I took a deep breath and typed out another message. "You know what's not fair? Being treated like I don't matter. Being asked to give up everything for Liam and Sarah. I'm doing fine now, and I don't need you guys trying to guilt me into coming back just because you feel bad. You made your choice. I made mine." It took a few minutes, but my dad responded again, and this time he didn't hold back. "You're being selfish, Maya. We raised you, gave you everything you needed, and this is how you repay us? By abandoning your family when things get tough? I expected better from you, but I guess you've always been difficult." There it was again. Difficult. That word they've always used to describe me when I didn't fit into their perfect little plans. Like, sorry, I wasn't the star athlete or the beauty pageant winner or whatever they wanted me to be. I was done with that word, done with their guilt trips. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I didn't have the energy to argue with them anymore. The next few days were quiet. I didn't hear from them again, and honestly, I was relieved. But then things got even worse. A few of my relatives, my aunt, my grandma, even a cousin, started texting me out of the blue. Turns out my parents had been talking to them, probably trying to paint me as the villain who abandoned the family. My aunt's message was the worst. She said something like, "Maya, you need to apologize to your parents. They're heartbroken over this. You're tearing the family apart. I wanted to scream. How was I tearing the family apart? All I did was stand up for myself for once. It's not like I asked them to choose between me and Liam or Sarah. They did that all on their own. And now I was the bad guy? At this point, I knew I needed some backup. I called Aunt Sarah, the only family member who actually understood what I was going through. When I told her what had been happening, she didn't even hesitate. Your parents are full of it, Maya, she said, straight up. They're trying to control you because they're losing their grip. Don't fall for it. You're doing great on your own, and they just can't stand it. Hearing her say that made me feel a lot better. It was like I finally had permission to not care what my parents thought anymore. Aunt Sarah had always been the one to go against the grain in our family. She never followed the rules, never tried to fit into the mold, and she was doing just fine. Maybe it was time I started following her lead. But then, just when I thought things were calming down, I got another message from my parents. This one was different, though. It wasn't just a guilt trip. My mom said they were selling the house. We've decided to downsize. The house is too big for just the two of us now that Liam is away at law school and Sarah's getting ready for college. We hope you understand. I stared at the message in shock. The house I grew up in, the place that had been my home, even if it never really felt like it, was being sold. They didn't even give me a heads up, didn't ask if I wanted to come get my stuff or anything. It was like they were wiping me out of their lives, one step at a time. I didn't reply. What was I supposed to say? Oh, cool. Thanks for selling my childhood out from under me? Yeah, no thanks. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of knowing it hurt me. But it did. A lot. Over the next week, I kept getting updates from other relatives about the house being sold. My parents were moving into some smaller place in a nicer neighborhood, apparently. It was like they were setting up this whole new life without me, and I was just supposed to be okay with it. But honestly, as hard as it was, I think it was the final push I needed to really let go. The house, the family, the whole messed up dynamic, it was all behind me now. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. There was no going back. By the end of that week, I blocked their numbers. I didn't want to hear from them anymore. I didn't need their guilt trips or their constant reminders that I was never going to be good enough for them. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. It was scary as hell, but it also felt kind of amazing. After I blocked my parents' numbers, things got kind of quiet. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no constant barrage of guilt trips or messages from relatives trying to talk some sense into me. It was just peaceful. At first, I didn't know what to do with that quiet. It felt weird, like something was missing. I guess I'd gotten so used to the chaos that being on my own, really on my own, was a whole new world. Life started to settle into a rhythm after that. My classes were going well, and I'd gotten the hang of balancing work and school. The library job turned out to be a lifesaver, not just for the paycheck, but for the quiet space to clear my head. I wasn't constantly stressed about what my parents thought of me or trying to live up to their expectations. I was just living. But then, out of nowhere, I get another message. This time it wasn't from my parents or some random relative. It was from Sarah. Yeah, my little sister who had basically been the perfect princess her whole life. The one who always got the best of everything, from mom's constant attention to the nicest birthday parties. We hadn't really talked since I left, so seeing her name pop up on my phone was a surprise. Her message was simple. Hey, can we talk? I wasn't sure what to make of it. I mean, Sarah had never been mean to me or anything, but she never really stuck up for me either. She was just kind of there, doing her own thing, living in her bubble. So why now? Why did she suddenly want to talk? I debated ignoring it, but after staring at the message for a few minutes, I decided to reply. Sure, what's up? We ended up setting a time to talk later that night. I wasn't sure what to expect, and to be honest, I was kind of nervous. What if she was just calling to guilt me too? Or worse, what if she was mad at me for leaving? When I picked up the phone, Sarah's voice was quiet, not the bubbly, happy tone I was used to hearing from her. She sounded different. Right off the bat, she apologized. I'm sorry, Maya, she said. I didn't really get it before. About you. About what you've been dealing with. That threw me off. I wasn't expecting her to say something like that. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my guard up just in case. Sarah sighed, and I could hear her shifting around on the other end of the phone, like she was struggling to find the right words. Mom and Dad have been talking a lot about you since you left, she explained. But I've been thinking about everything too, and I realized they've been kind of awful to you. Like, I always knew things were different for you, but I didn't really see it, you know? I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to be mad at her for not realizing it sooner, but another part of me just felt sad. Sad that she was only just now seeing how messed up things had been. Yeah, it's been pretty rough, I finally said, trying to keep my voice calm. Sarah kept talking, and for the first time, she opened up about her own struggles. She talked about the pressure mom put on her to always be perfect, how every little thing she did had to be the best or it wasn't good enough. It was like she was trapped in this constant competition, always trying to live up to mom's impossible standards. It wasn't the same as what I'd gone through, but I could tell it was weighing on her in a way I hadn't seen before. I've been so scared of disappointing them, Sarah admitted. Like, if I mess up even once, it'll all fall apart. But seeing you leave and stand up for yourself, it made me realize I don't want to live like that either. I don't want to be perfect all the time. I wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, I was glad Sarah was finally starting to see things clearly. On the other, I was still carrying a lot of anger and hurt from how I'd been treated for so long. But I couldn't just push her away. She was reaching out in a way that felt real, and I knew how hard it was to break away from the pressure our parents put on us. I get it, I told her. It's tough to stand up to them, but you've got to do what's right for you. You can't keep living for them. We talked for a long time that night, and by the end of it, something had shifted between us. It wasn't perfect, and I still had my guard up, but for the first time I felt like I had a real connection with Sarah. Not the picture-perfect sister she always tried to be, but the real Sarah, the one who was struggling just like I had been. After that conversation, things started to change even more. Sarah and I kept in touch, talking every few days, just checking in on each other. She was still figuring things out, but I could tell she was trying to take control of her own life, not just live the one our parents wanted for her. And in a weird way, I felt proud of her. She was starting to stand up for herself, and that took guts. Meanwhile, I was finally feeling like I was building a life that was mine. I'd joined a student group for people with toxic family backgrounds, and it was nice to have people to talk to who understood what I was going through. I wasn't the only one dealing with messed up family dynamics, and that made me feel less alone. One day out of the blue, I got an email from the University Counseling Center. They'd heard about the support group I was part of and wanted me to help develop a peer support program for other students dealing with similar issues. It was a paid position, and it felt like everything I'd been through was finally being put to good use. I could actually help other people who were struggling, and that felt huge. I started working on ideas for the program, drawing from my own experiences and the stories I'd heard from others in the group. It was like all the crap I'd dealt with, my parents, the guilt trips, the pressure, was finally turning into something positive, something that could actually make a difference. And as I sat there, sketching out plans for the program, I realized something. I didn't need my parents' approval anymore. I didn't need them to see me, to validate me, or to tell me I was doing a good job. I had built my own life, and for the first time, I felt like I was in control of it. Sure, there were still tough days, days where I missed the idea of having a normal family, where I wished things could have been different, but I was okay with that. I was learning how to be okay with myself, and that was something my parents could never take away from me.